Hi, everyone. This is Mary Kurek with Frontrunners Innovate, and I have a very interesting guest today, and I'm so excited to bring her to you. But first to know, and I'm kind of starting to do this so that people can loop in that this subject matter today actually dovetails with Sustainable Development Goal number 3, which is good health and wellness. And so I want people to start to make those connect the dots as we talk to people. So today I have Dr. Maya Shetreat, and I hope I said that correctly. Maya Shetreat. Okay. And I like that. Shetreat. That's easy to remember. Child and adult neurologist and the founder, I think, and CEO of Brain Mending. Holistic. I looked at all these different labels that are on you. I mean, honestly, you should be a dirt specialist. I think that's what we should call you. Urban farmer, herbalist. Has the scientific background to understand how healing works and the spiritual aspect and the whole holistic aspect of how to do it with other modalities that we can use. And I think we kind of tie that spiritual medicine piece together with what you're doing, Maya. And I'm just tickled to death to bring you to the population that we kind of service and see what's there that resonates with everybody. So first we want to know you before we know what you do. So if you will share a little bit about your background and what brought you to the work that you're doing now.
Sure. I mean, it's a pretty, as for many people, I think, a non-linear journey to get to this place. As you might imagine, being a conventionally trained adult and pediatric neurologist and also herbalist and, psychedelics coach and,
Mhm.
a lot of the work that I do is sort of a little circuitous, but, you know, I actually went to medical school because I saw this special called Bill Moyer's Healing and the Mind. And I think I must have been in, I don't know, high school or college at the time. And they had this story of a young girl who had lupus and she was really having flares with lupus, but when she had her medication, it was causing her to have kidney failure. So
Ooh.
they didn't know what to do, and they found this sort of mind body team at the hospital that was doing this really seminal research that they gave her castor oil every time she would take her medication. And eventually they stopped giving her the medication, but continued to give her castor oil every time she would normally get her medication. And
Mhm.
she responded, her body responded as if she was getting the medication, but not having any side effects because she wasn't actually getting it.
Yeah.
And I thought, whoa, this is mind blowing stuff. And they said,
Yeah.
yeah, this is a new field. It's called psychoneuroimmunology. And this is a field of medicine now. And I thought, I'm going to medical school. And it wasn't like the first time I'd ever thought of going to medical school, but it really pushed me over the
Mhm.
edge. I said, no, like, I love this. I was actually an English major in college, but I took all of my pre-meds in my senior year and wrote my essay about this, if you can believe it, and they let me into med school. And that was sort of a little bit of my origin story in terms of why I wanted to go to med school. But
Mhm.
then during med school, I got married, I had 3 children, and it's a very intensive, many years, you might imagine, the medical school, the residency, the fellowship,
Yeah.
life happening, kind of a very sort of brainwashing experience in a certain way, so in some of the best ways, and also in maybe not some of the best ways. But by the end of that time, um, my son, my youngest son, got sick. So I had 3 children over the course of my training,
Yeah.
and I couldn't. No one was really helping me with what was going on with him, and he was having asthma symptoms. He was having neurologic symptoms. It was really scary for me as a doctor and as his mom. And, I was taking him to my colleagues and they were like, yeah, well, very like wishy washy, but he was sick all the time. And I did this deep dive and finally into the scientific literature, which is what I knew to do, what I'd been taught to do. And I took him off of soy. I took him to an allergist who finally agreed to test him for food allergies. I took him off of soy, and all of his symptoms disappeared.
Wow.
And at
Mhm.
that point, I was like, wait, why would stopping soy cause him to have improvement of his symptoms? Why would allergies cause neurologic
Yeah.
symptoms? Why, right? Why is soy so problematic? What's going on? How do we grow soy? And it took me into
Mhm.
this little rabbit hole, which ended up becoming my book, The Dirt Cure,
Yeah.
because this approach ended up helping many, many, many many people that I treated from around the world. I had a very international practice. So that was the beginning of this journey, and it kind of grew into me ending up going to Ecuador, studying with indigenous
Wow.
elders and healers, and taking me into plant medicines and sacred ceremony. So it's really grown into
Mhm.
my institute, the Terrain Institute, where I share a lot of these teachings.
That is fascinating. It's really interesting that on the last colonoscopy that I had, I was telling my doctor that I need something because I've got this, I get migraine headaches, and I think it might be having to do with my brain, gut connection. And I said, I have acid reflux. He said, who told you that? And I said, well, I don't remember, but sometime in the past, I think, somebody did. And he said, how do you even know that? That's not even a thing. That's a symptom. That's not a,
Mhm.
actual disease that you have. He said, let's work on your diet. So he took me off soy and
Interesting.
took me, he changed the diet up. It's not just soy, but soy is one of the things that he changed up on me. And I thought, isn't that interesting that just the change in taking away some of, because he said it might be just a food allergy you've got going on. And so just taking that away, some of those things away, was really, really interesting. So I'm a believer. And funny you should say about the indigenous population and plant medicine is I was on a phone call one time with a gentleman that I do some work with in Madagascar in Africa. And several places in Africa won't do the vaccines for the pandemic, for the COVID-19, because they grow something naturally
Hmm.
that they believe totally in being able to handle this sort of virus. And, that, and not only the virus, but a few other things that it cures. So I think it's really interesting when you start to look at how these other populations are starting to cure themselves, or have been doing it for years. We're just now hearing about it. Is really pretty amazing. So at what point did you kind of put a business, stick the shingle out and go, I can help more people. I know I can use what I know, and then use what I've learned with the indigenous populations and everything, and I can push this forward. So when did that happen?
Well, so what I was so fascinated by when I started learning in Ecuador and learning with some of my, mentors and teachers, was the paradigm that we aren't just physical bodies, but we're mental, emotional, spiritual, and ecological bodies. So, in other words, we're not just this, right? I mean, and obviously that's not like unheard of, but in the idea of healing. So, in this paradigm, physical illness is actually very downstream.
Yeah.
If you're not in good spiritual health, then eventually you're going to manifest physical symptoms. So what is good spiritual health is being in good relationship with yourself, with those around you, with the land you stand on, with ancestors,
Yeah.
right? So I was like, this is what I've always felt, but you can't talk about that in medicine. I mean, it's a big deal, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm shocked and pleased to hear that your GI was saying to you, hey, let's change your diet. Because to be honest, I remember talking when I first started out in private practice forever ago. The pediatric GI in this big practice said to me, oh, some people believe you can heal problems with food. And I was like, like, why would that not be true? So anyway, I think once I recognized that paradigm, I felt like there had to be some kind of container for people to understand that, experience that, especially because I saw so many people when I was really mainly a practicing physician. I saw so many people who were stuck, either stuck in their physical illness and they were trying everything. These were
Yeah.
not unmotivated people, or stuck with mental illness where it was just kind of this slog and really finding it
Mhm.
difficult, even with all the treatments, or even just feeling stuck in their lives. So, what I started to see was there's a whole element, a whole perspective, a whole paradigm that's just not being explored, which is kind of the language of our spirit, of our soul, that really does have a huge impact on all of the other parts of our lives, including our physical health. And so I founded the Terrain Institute, where I would teach, and I teach now, transformational approaches to healing. And some of that is actually training people in leadership to then bring this to their communities,
Yeah.
in whatever capacity, I've trained politicians, I've trained CEOs, I've trained, media moguls, like everyone and anyone who comes through with that desire to bring some of this paradigm into whatever they're doing is a really big part of my work.
That's fantastic. I'm a real believer of keeping those doors open and opening newer doors. I embrace innovation anyway, and diversity in all areas. I feel like, we'd be ignorant if we just kind of stayed in our own little linear pathway and did not kick open a door every now and again and pay attention to some ideas that are either new or just not fully explored, just because we didn't know any better or because we weren't presented with the opportunity to explore it. So we're presenting that opportunity today. So tell us a little bit about what you do at the Terrain Institute, other than the coaching consulting. I know there's some particular program pathways. Do you do retreats? Do you do any kind of webinars and whatnot to help people learn?
Yep, I do retreats. I do free ceremonies every month, actually. So for anybody who wants to come and have we do a journey, essentially online, on Zoom, which I started doing during the pandemic, and it's been wildly successful. And so it's just transformational time together, and people have really, really responded beautifully to that. I offer retreats, in-person retreats. And I go and do trainings as well. I've done that for, one of our congressmen, in fact. And so we've brought a lot of this into, other people's communities as well. And then I have a certification program, as I mentioned, which is a leadership training program. And then I'm launching a psychedelics training program as well. So for people who want to kind of do a deep dive into the science and the spirituality, and the practice and the safety with an actual doctor or neurologist, but also someone who's had a lot of hands-on experience. That's another offering that we have.
I think it would be helpful if you defined that space, the psychedelics, so that people have a more of a reference on that.
Absolutely. So people talk about plant medicine and or sacred plant medicine. And for me, plant medicine includes all different plants, right? Which are not just psychoactive plants, because plant medicine is something really broad and potent. But the way that I talk about psychedelics or plant medicine is in terms of teacher plants. These plants, or fungi, in the case of, mushrooms, like psilocybin mushrooms, that actually interact with us in these very profound, spiritual, transformative, and mind-altering ways that allow us to have a significant shift in the way that our nervous system and our bodies operate for a period of time. And then those shifts can actually persist for ongoing, even once the experience itself is over. So a lot of people have heard of psychedelics because, in the 50s and 60s, it was really big. And then it was made illegal, and then people thought, oh, those are bad, they're drugs, they're dangerous. It turns out a lot of the reason for that making them illegal was political. And there was a ton of research going on at that time that was very positive. So there's been a new awakening where over the last 5 to 10 years, incredible research has been published in all the premier journals, scientific journals, and coming out of Stanford and Harvard and, NYU and Johns Hopkins, like all over the world, they're doing academic studies that show benefit in major depression, OCD, addiction, PTSD, eating disorders, even dementia. even pain syndromes. So we're seeing this real revolution in mental health and even I think in physical health. That's very exciting. Not to say that I think that every single person needs this or should be engaging with these medicines, but I think we all need to be educated about
Mhm.
it so that we know who might benefit and
Mhm.
who it's not for, at least not right now. And then a lot of what I find really interesting and exciting is that you don't even have to always have that psychedelic experience, but
Mhm.
you can engage in something called microdosing or even quantum dosing, where you don't have that altered feeling or that trip, that people will refer to, but you can have a lot of the neuroplasticity and shifts and actually treat physical illness, pain syndromes, autoimmunity, and so on,
Mhm.
just with these tiny, non altering, what we would call sub psychedelic doses. So there's so much potential, and it's really exciting. And obviously, you can tell I'm very passionate about
Yeah.
sharing this information. And then there's the whole piece of the communities, the indigenous communities that have been
Mhm.
holding this knowledge for centuries and
Yeah.
centuries. It's really the beginning. And so this, as you said before, it's not that it's new, it's that we have not been open and that we sometimes take this knowledge and this wisdom. So part of what I teach about in my training also is about the reciprocity that's involved, what our responsibility is if
Mhm.
we engage with these teacher plants.
As you were talking, I was thinking about the benefits to this, other than it being natural and nature based, is that when you think about the pharma that's out there for pain medications and the incredible cost that that you could lay
Mhm.
out over that insurance will only pay a small percentage of now. I mean, I think back to my father-in-law when he had cancer and he was in so much pain. The pills that just one pill was $90. And that's just not even, thinking about long-term cost of that he was going to have to pay out of pocket. And he chose not to. So in essence, he chose, I'm just going to die with it. I'm going to be in pain and I'm going to be in pain until I die. And, basically effectively gave up. And I think about, all the people now who are, and that was several years ago. That $90 pill is probably $290 now. So it really brings home the aspect of looking more towards nature in some of these, you know, I won't say cures because I'm not sure anything is curative other than the standpoint of releasing the pain that's causing more issue with whatever health situation you got going on. It can't help you to be in constant pain when you're suffering with some other, whether it's diabetes or whatever it is. Whether it's cancer, doesn't matter, lupus, like you mentioned. So, and that does a number on your mental health. So I wanted to get back into mental health as well. From the standpoint of, you've mentioned memory diseases, like dementia, Alzheimer's and that sort of thing. Where is that on the scale of connecting with some of these, um, nature-based cure, I won't say healing
Yeah.
opportunities?
Yeah. So, what I'll say is just in response to what you were just talking about, which is just a really tragic situation. So many people find themselves in some variation or iteration of that kind of story is that, these natural remedies, whether it is something like psychedelics, which actually do have, what I want to say is in many cases, one dose,
Mhm.
macro dose, can be curative for things
Really?
like major depression. And you can go Google New York Times articles on psychedelics, and like
Really?
there's some really incredible literature on how 1 to 2 doses with the appropriate support, before, during, after. This isn't like go to your parents' basement type stuff.
Yeah.
But, that it can be actually, curative for like things like addiction or pain syndromes or so on. So we're
Yeah.
seeing actually that it can actually totally reverse some of these conditions.
That's
But that
fantastic.
said, yeah, yeah. So that said, I think what's really exciting is right now there's incredible research on microdosing, as well as lion's mane. So microdosing psilocybin, which is, the magic mushroom, in a sub-psychedelic dose, so no altered mental
Yeah.
state,
Mhm.
with lion's mane and niacin. That combination has been shown to be, and is being studied in an academic setting now to actually reverse Alzheimer's symptoms and
Right.
um, pathology in the brain. So it's really, really interesting. And then, I feel I have a special interest, not just because I'm a neurologist in treating dementia naturally, but because my mother has dementia. She developed early dementia. So I've been supporting her treatment for the past 10 years.
Uh-huh.
And so I have her on a whole regimen
Mhm.
for her dementia protocol that, includes lion's mane. It includes something called bacopa, which is an Ayurvedic herb. Um, it includes phosphatidylcholine as another remedy, B vitamins, and so on, mitochondrial support like CoQ10 and carnitine. So I have her on a whole regimen.
Mhm.
And it hasn't stopped the trajectory. And of course she doesn't, like, I'd love her on a particular diet. She's not interested in that. But even with what she is doing, it's really slowed her progression. She's been on it for over 10 years and she still lives at home. She's
Mhm.
still, with her partner. She still goes to concerts. She's still, right. So I think
How old is she,
she
Naya?
is 77.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great that, and honestly, if she got this, what you said, 10 years, so she was in her late 60s, early 70s, maybe, when you started noticing these things, that's really kind of, to me, early, maybe
Yeah.
early onset of dementia. Yeah. So that's amazing if we can start to kind of attack those memory issues that come up. And sometimes they're not, in older people. I've, heard of people having really early onset, cases of dementia. And Alzheimer's is just running rampant these days. It's becoming more and more, every family you talk to has got somebody in it that has, has dealt with this. My own mother had dementia toward the end of her life. And so I know how devastating that disease. It's not just devastating to the patient, it's devastating to everybody who's involved in the care of that person. It really is damaging. So, from the standpoint then of, let's say, you mentioned depression, anxiety, I imagine also it has an impactful
Mhm.
place there. So what's happening now with the mainstream approach to this? Do you see it ever becoming more mainstream for people to reach out and look for these types of healing therapies?
Absolutely. I think certainly even the fact, for example, from a natural standpoint, that you had a gastroenterologist who brought up diet. I
Yeah,
want to tell you, from when I started doing this, that's a huge
a
leap.
huge step, isn't it?
Nobody was talking about that. Even when, I first started talking about it, it was like I was a wacko. So
Yeah.
it's very exciting. And I think as far as like herbal medicine,
Mhm.
which obviously I'm very passionate about, and I love because it's the people's medicine. Any
Yeah.
person can
Yeah.
access that medicine. And I have herbal training programs for anybody in my
Yeah.
institute so that people can literally access whatever it is that they want or need for their GI health, for their mental health, for their depression, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and psychedelics, I think, are very much poised to become part of the mainstream. Right now, it's still mostly academic studies, but we do have ketamine clinics. MDMA for PTSD is, I think, pretty poised right now to get FDA approved. And I just saw, for example, in the state of Connecticut that they just approved to open psilocybin and psychedelic clinics throughout the state
Mhm.
for mental health issues. So I think
Wow.
this is like, it's going to
That's
happen.
We're right on the tip. Yeah. And I was thinking about, as you were talking about that, is it the VA or the veterans organizations that are out there pushing for that for PTSD? I don't know if it's cannabis or, treatments and that sort of thing. Wow. I could so see that making an incredible difference. in so many lives. So impactful. Um, I wanted to hit, before we kind of move forward to see what's coming next, I wanted to talk a little bit about the gems that you work with. And because I'm personally curious about that. And if I am, I'm sure other people are. So talk to me a little bit about what you do with those.
So I created these kits basically for people to be able to build a sacred space for themselves. They're called Earth Medicine kits, and uh, they have ethically sourced gemstones in them
Uh-huh.
and other like plants and sacred plants. Sometimes I'll have slices of ayahuasca, actually not for consumption, but because she's a beautiful vine, and so there's all different kinds of beautiful pieces in there to create a little sacred space, and to work with the energies of these kind of beautiful energies of the earth. There's a reason that we are so drawn to crystals and stones, and it's
Mhm.
because actually, at least on one level, I'm sure we could get into a whole conversation just about that, but they're actually in these sacred geometry configurations within the crystals, and so we align with that, right? We actually attune to that, and I think that is a very big reason that people feel, besides just the beauty of it, this sense of like feeling energized or inspired in particular ways. So I offer each month like a moon drop where we have different stones, and some of them are wild, unpolished types of stones, and each one
Mhm.
is unique. And sometimes they're, a polished sphere or something like that. And then I tell people how they can work with it so that they can use it for their own healing or for their space or to shift things in their life that they feel like they want to shift, and it can act as a focus point for that.
That's fantastic. So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to give you an example to play with me on that a little bit. For my anniversary this year, my husband gave me a Brazilian emerald, and I love emeralds. I've actually went to Colombia at one point in time and ended up with a beautiful, really brilliant emerald ring. And it was just a simple, wasn't a big flashy thing, simple ring. And it was stolen from me. And so, here for my anniversary, it was this particular type of emerald has sort of a smoky look to it, and or almost like a foggy look to it, but it's a beautiful, shade of green that I've never seen before. And it, every time I look at it, makes me feel good. But what I know that different stones maybe carry different sort of meanings to them. I wanted to ask you about the emerald in particular, because I know you wrote about that recently in one of your newsletters.
Emerald is so, Emerald has this incredible historical um, value, right? We know emeralds are valuable, of course, but in many cultures, it was actually more valuable even than diamonds. And they thought in ancient times that the goddess Ishtar was encased in the emerald, and that, in ancient Egypt, it was emeralds were considered an amulet of rebirth and fertility. So uh, emeralds are considered to be really, really important for the heart chakra,
Yeah.
and help you have clarity and almost clairvoyance, we might say.
Mhm.
Even Aristotle, I want to say, for the doubters, wrote about the importance of working with the emerald and how it can be important for physical, mental, and emotional health. So the emerald actually gives you this clarity of heart. And I think of it as one of the things I see that's so compromised for people is not that they can't get what they want, but that they don't really know what their heart's desire really, really is.
Mm.
Because people pleasing or feeling like, they're stuck in having to do this or that and their responsibilities and so on. And it's like they're not even connected to their heart's desires. So, what I love with the emerald is that they help you really tune into your heart's wisdom and trust yourself more fully and open up that, unleash, I would even say, your heart's desire.
Sounds like wellness to me. Spiritual wellness, mental wellness. All of this sounds like wellness to me, health and wellness. This is perfect. So I want to ask you what's coming up that we might be able to attach ourselves to that you're doing. Books, events, anything like that you want to share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so the big thing that I'm launching actually is going to be this new psychedelics program,
Mhm.
um, and that is something anyone can sign up for. So I think that's a big one. And then in the fall,
It's
Uh,
virtual, right? Just a virtual program to follow online?
it's virtual for now. Yeah. Um, and in the fall, I will be offering the launch of my certification again.
Mhm.
And we actually have people from all over the world. We've had, everyone from the Philippines to Australia to Russia to Germany, everywhere in the world. And it's all about kind of, you've had that awakening. You've had that feeling like I want to bring the conversation of not just physical and mental health, but emotional and spiritual
Mhm.
into the world. How do I do that?
Mhm.
I've had the awakening. What now? So those are the two big programs that I have
Okay.
coming that are both online. And of course, I do offer in person retreats. So for anyone who's on my email list,
Mhm.
they can be on my free ceremonies and they'll always get first dibs on my in person events that I do around the world.
Ooh, tell me some of the places that you do these events.
Well, so we've done Ecuador and
Uh-huh.
um, we have Mexico coming, and actually we're going to be exploring Portugal as our next location because um, Portugal. Well, besides that, I hear because I've not been to Portugal is the California of Europe. This is what I'm told by a
My
friend.
son has been and he loved it. Yeah.
It's supposed to be absolutely gorgeous,
Mhm.
and they're very flexible. Also, if we wanted to do any kind of journey work there,
Mhm.
Portugal is uh, very like they have no issues of legality for
Mhm.
any kind of plant medicine journeys if
Mhm.
we chose to do that at the retreat as well.
Very interesting. All of the information about the events and what you offer on your website, I take it, and so we can send people there. And we will do that. All the links that you provide me, we'll make sure that we provide that for everyone here. So my last question is what I ask all the people that I interview: who do you need to meet to help you move your impact out there?
Hmm. Well, so I think there are so many things that I could say, but one of the two big pieces that I have coming. One of them is I think someone who can help grow. I created a quantum plant medicine product.
Hmm.
Uh, so it's totally legal, non psychedelic, but actually has the quantum imprint of these medicines in them, these plant medicines that we discussed, so that people can start to experience it and build that relationship. So, someone who is interested in helping to grow that would be one. And the other would be just, I think, people who are willing to bring me into their companies or their communities and let me share some of this information so that I can show them ways to kind of develop neuroplasticity and grow this work.
So that brought me to a question that I need to ask you. Where do these types of therapies fall with the FDA so that we can just get that question answered?
Yeah, absolutely. And I go into this in quite a bit of depth in my program, actually.
Okay.
But the short answer to this is we have a big decriminalization movement happening right now. So, Washington, D.C., Oakland,
Mhm.
California, Denver, Colorado, the state of Oregon, I think Ann Arbor, as I just said, like
Mhm.
even Connecticut is, starting these clinics. So, decriminalization is basically if you were to engage with this, let's say with a coach or
Mhm.
someone like that, you would be at the lowest priority for any kind of law enforcement issue. And this is sort of the compromise that governments are basically
Mhm.
implementing so that people can start to get the help that they need before this is totally legalized. Oregon actually has legalized this,
Mhm.
um, and all substances, all of these substances,
Mhm.
but other than that, there's this decriminalization effort, and it's actually spreading like wildfire throughout the United States and in other countries as well. So, um, more and more, it's becoming accessible to people.
Yeah.
Still, legality issues depending on where you are and
Where
what
you
you're
live.
engaging with.
Mhm.
So, it's important actually to have some guidance on that always.
Fantastic. So definitely good information, good, you just opened some doors that I did not realize that were there. So for me, and so I know the same thing for other people that might be watching. So I'm going to say thank you so much, Maya, for joining us today and sharing this very useful, very meaningful information for people out there. It's really something we've never really explored from the standpoint of health and wellness, and should be. So we would just want to make sure that we stay very open-minded to all these things and explore for our own selves what may work. I do know there's probably people out there that do have health concerns, that they've tried just about everything. And, this is one more opportunity or option they didn't know existed. And so thank you very much on their behalf. So very good. Yeah, I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. If you'll stay with me, Maya, I'm going to say goodbye to everybody else. If you're watching this on YouTube, go to www.frontrunnersinnovate.com, where you'll get to see this interview. You'll get the audio podcast version of this in case you're one of those that like to walk and listen. And you'll have the links that she provides us for everything, how to follow her, how to get involved with what she's been talking about. So again, thank you very much, and happy front running, everybody.